Hello and welcome back to our study of Peninei Halacha, the teachings of Rabbi Eliezer Melamed Shlita. Here we are at the end of our week, Erev Shabbos Kodesh, Parshas Vayishlach. Hope everyone had a great week. Looking forward to a great Shabbos ahead. And we will conclude our week of learning. But first, please remember to daven for Chaylei Tzva Agana Yisrael, Refuah Shalem Alachol Petzuei Yisrael, safe return of our hostages. And let's hope, as if the news is accurate, that maybe we're inching closer, hopefully, to some good news. Let's just hope and daven, keep davening. And we daven and we learn. Le'ili Nishmas, Seren Daniel Shemin Arav Deron V'Shalei Shem Yikum Damo. The next chapter is Yehudi Mechalel Shabbos. Hayachas l'chilul Shabbos chamor b'miyuchad. When we talk about someone who is a Shabbos, a Sabbath violator, there is a unique categorization here. Chazal said that someone who blatantly violates the Sabbath, we're not allowed to accept a korban, an offering from him. If he does shchita, it's pasul. Who posels to erev kagoy, and all sorts of violations coming for an erev, whatever it might be. Hapizeh kasav Rambam, so the Rambam writes, Hashabbos v'avodah zarah kol achas mishtehem shkula keneged shar kol mitzvos haTorah. Shabbos and Avodah Zarah, each one is on the same level as, let's say, all the other mitzvahs in the Torah. Shabbos is the sign between HaKadosh Baruch Hu, between us, forever. Therefore, someone who violates all the mitzvahs of the Torah, the other mitzvahs, Haru B'chlal Rishei Yisrael, he is in the category of a wicked person in Israel. But someone who blatantly violates the Shabbos, it's a much stricter connotation here, and he is as if one worships idols. And the two of them are considered as non-Jews. Very, very strong words from the Rambam. So many Rishonim have written that if a Jew who is blatantly violating the Shabbos, if he touches your wine, it has the same din, the same law as if a non-Jew who does not worship idols touches your wine, meaning that you can't drink it, but you're allowed to have benefit. And even though many Rishonim didn't mention this din, many of the Acharonim, they agreed and they paskin halacha that someone who's mechal Shabbos with farhesia, a blatant Shabbos violator, if he touches your wine, you can't drink it. So you'll ask the obvious question. The prohibition against non-Jews touching our wine was because we didn't want to have assimilation, intermarriage, and this doesn't apply to Jewish people, even though they're not keeping Shabbos. But since, as far as many halachas and some we just mentioned, that someone who's machal Shabbos b'far Hesia is considered tantamount to a non-Jew, therefore this falls in that category as well. V'od, and furthermore, she'asris magam mishum knas macha klapia over malaver chamer shikazu. And this serves as sort of a penalty. It's a knas that when they touch your wine, this is sort of a rebuke. It's a punishment for saying, listen, you're in the specific category of violators of the Torah, specifically Shabbos, which is tantamount to Avodah Zarah. Therefore, we have added this prohibition. Because what identifies the Jewish person as being an observant person? What's the marquee mitzvah? And of course, that's the Shabbos. Someone who's so blatant and brazen to violate the Shabbos in public, he treats you're like you're stomping on the faith of the Jewish people. And you are basically admitting that you don't identify with the Jewish people. Very, very strong words. But this is only if he touches the wine itself or he drank from it that the wine is prohibited. But pouring from the bottle to a glass, this does not prohibit the wine. Because many poskim hold that even a non-Jew that does not worship idols, if they merely pour the wine without touching it, that it is still permitted. Many are machmir even for a non-Jew, though. They don't even allow a non-Jew to pour without touching the wine. But they'll agree that this does not apply to a Jewish person who's Mechal Shabbos. Certainly, if you're just carrying the glass from one place to another, that if the wine is not prohibited, because even in this case, a non-Jew who worships idols does not prohibit the wine. But a new question arises. In recent generations, a question arises regarding people who are Mechal Shabbos blatantly. Shekain l'marbeh hatzar rabbim Yisrael hechelu l'chal Shabbos. Obviously, it's very painful for us that many people, again, we're writing this in Israel, so obviously it's even more pronounced, that many people have violated the Shabbos regularly. So much so that the keeping of Shabbos does not define your Jewish identity necessarily. Not only this, that in the past, people who would protest against people that violated Shabbos, so that assisted, it helped creating a fence. But later on, in later generations, it does nothing. Instead of creating a fence, it actually pushes people further away. So therefore, when it comes to people who are Mechal Shabbos, we become very, very lenient in this sense. When we say, use this very strong words, that if you're Mechal Shabbos, you're like a non-Jew, that's if you do it so what we call lahachas. If you're doing it specifically to oppose the religion and to show that I'm dafka. But let's say somebody, and this is perhaps the case in many, many Israelis today, that even though they don't keep Shabbos, but they'll have a semblance of Shabbos. They'll have Friday night dinner, they'll make Kiddush, they'll light candles. So he says, certainly you can't put somebody like that in the category of a non-Jew. And perhaps the reason why they don't keep Shabbos is because they didn't have a Torah education. They didn't have a religious background. So this is in a case what's called ones. It's against their will, meaning it's not their fault. They don't understand the severity of not keeping Shabbos. And let's say somebody even grew up in a house that was religious. Sometimes the secular influence is so strong until such a point where someone is unable to resist the influence of the chiloni, of the secular society. Certainly we're not going to put that person in the category of a non-Jew. He says, and certainly, if we're going to say, "Oh, we're better than you," and we're going to make you can't touch my wine, you're in the category of a non-Jew, you think that will bring anybody closer? No, it's going to cause more ava, more dissent, more division within Am Yisrael, which is something certainly that is not helpful to anyone. And even those who are machmir today, and they're strict, because they want to create a separation and not have the influence of non-Shomer Shabbos people on the religious community, Muskim l'maisal rov poskim, they will agree, according to most poskim, shebeshas hatzorech k'dei limnoi elbon o pegia ba'achva shetzrich lios ben Yisrael ein lahachmer b'yayin shenegro machal Shabbos kol zman she'ein osim zos lahachis. That they will say that if you have a choice, if a non-Shomer Shabbos person touches your wine, and if you say, no, don't touch my wine, and it's going to create dissent, it's going to cause division, it's going to cause ava, and the person is not doing so lahachas, he's not doing it to show I'm anti-religious, certainly they would agree that you could have this person touch your wine. And also he says, and he adds in here, you could certainly add him to a minyan. A very, very long footnote here, which gets into these types of questions, and perhaps different communities have different challenges, but let's say, can someone who's not Shomer Shabbos receive an aliyah? Can someone who's not Shomer Shabbos lead davening from the Amud? So again, you have to know your community. You have to know, so where we are might be one standard, where you are it might be a different standard, and you'll also pay attention the next time that you'll be in Israel and you'll be in a restaurant and you order wine and order non-mavushal wine, and very likely the Israeli waiter, who in all chances is probably not Shomer Shabbos, will ask you, do you mind if I pour the wine for you? And that's exactly based on this halacha. And I think based on what we've learned, that person's not is actually being respectful of your wishes. You should say absolutely by all means, and it creates achva, creates achdus in Klal Yisrael, something for which we all strive. But we continue our learning next week, but we conclude a week of learning here. Thank you for joining us. Please continue davening for Chayalei Tzvah Israel, for Shalom L'chol B'tzvei Yisrael, safe return of our hostages. Lili Nishmat, Sarah and Daniel Shemin, Rav Durham Shelley, Shemikim Damo. Wishing you all a peaceful and restful Shabbos. Looking forward to having you join us next week. But until then, Shabbat Shalom U'Mevarach.